Hey everyone, welcome to the show. My name is Sam Shaw and I'm the founder of Wall Street Mastermind. This is Wall Street Mastermind's Elevate program, where we take our flagship coaching program and give it away for free to high potential students who are currently in a difficult financial situation. The goal of this show is to first and foremost give these students the coaching and guidance that they wouldn't be able to get otherwise and help them break into investment banking. Of course, we also want to give all of you an in-depth look at how to go about your own investment banking preparation process the right way, so that you can model it after the same proven methodology and strategies that we've used to place over 90% of our students into investment banking across every single bulge bracket and elite boutique bank over the last several years. With hundreds of thousands of applicants competing to break into investment banking globally each year, our team only has the bandwidth to help a very small percentage of you. So my hope is that this show helps all of you, even if you aren't able to directly participate in our program and work with us. So let's get to it. In this session, we review Ximena's answers to the strengths and weaknesses questions, which seem very straightforward on the surface, but tends to be answered poorly by so many students. We also discuss situational questions like, tell me about a time when you demonstrated teamwork or leadership, or fill in the blank on any other qualities that the banks typically look for. All right, cool. So we are back for session 6 of our sessions with Ximena. And today we're just going to continue working through some of these behavioral questions. We've gone through kind of the guaranteed questions like, tell me about yourself, why banking, why this bank. We talked about last week kind of the resume related questions, just like talking about the different experiences on her resume and, you know, why you chose your school and majors and things like that. And then so this week, I'm going to start diving into some of the other really important behavioral questions like strengths and weaknesses questions, which can be tricky, as well as the situational questions, which are basically, you know, tell me about a time when you did X, Y, or Z, right? So let's just start going through this, and then I'm sure we'll have a bunch of comments and questions along the way. So if you have questions as I'm talking about, just, you know, just ask. All right. So I'm going to read through this. So what are 3 greatest strengths? So greatest strengths are being determined, having a high work ethic. I would say strong work ethic. It's probably a more appropriate adjective for work ethic, but strong work ethic and being intellectually curious. Okay. Okay. So let's do these one by one. So one of the greatest strengths is having a determined mindset. Example of this is when I tore both my ACLs. ACL is fine. People know what that is. Leading up to the most important soccer trial seasons in high school. Like most bankers follow sports, and a lot of athletes get injured their ACLs all the time. So it's definitely a term that people know. Leading up to the most important soccer trial season is high school. These years were essentially growing with the team and preparing athletes for their recruitment to go further in their career. Going pro in soccer was one of my biggest dreams at the time, so no longer is, right? I helped lead my middle school team in the semifinals at the beginning of 8th grade. When our match came, this sentence, I don't know, it feels a little bit out of place. What are you trying to do with this sentence here?
I think transition. Like, I think I was giving it a timeline because, so I'm going back to 8th grade to explain like why then like I missed soccer tryouts in high school. I think I was just trying to kind of position 8th grade.
This is like freshman year of high school?
So the tryouts were a freshman year, but then the incident was 8th grade.
I see.
Or I can just say during 8th grade, a girl missed a shot.
I would just say like an example is when I tore both my ACLs in 8th grade, right before the most important soccer trials seasons for the high school team. How's that? I think that's more clear, right? Mm-hmm. These years are essentially growing the team. Okay. I'm just going to delete that. I'm also going to break up your answers a little bit so it's easier to for me to look at the different parts of the answer.
Yeah. I had it like in Spark. All of these, I had them in Spark format, but I saw one of your modules, they like put them all together. So I just,
No, it's fine. I actually think it's better to just have them in the almost like the outline format, because then when you're practicing it and when you're like, you're not going to memorize this verbatim, right?
Mhm.
So you're going to more like remember at a high level, these are the points that I want to hit on.
Mhm.
And so I think it's easier to remember that when you have it broken out. So
Yeah.
that's fine. But basically, this is the situation and the problem, right? When our match came, a girl missed a shot and kicked my. Oh, this is how you broke it, right? I don't think we need this detail either. This is emotionally exhausting as I knew recruiters often struggling and pushing the first high school years, and I've been looking forward to them since sixth grade. Recovery took 7 months, but in every session of physical therapy, I was determined to get back in the game and return to make sophomore soccer tryouts. By the time the new round of tryouts arrived, my legs were equally as strong and all the work had paid off. Tryouts were going great, and I had even been put aside the varsity girls to train. During this time, however, I was also playing for a club team. Aside when we were going, I was sprinting up the sideline when my other leg made a terrible movement, and I knew what that same pain meant. It's about to go through the whole process again, but on the other leg, I was devastated after scheduling a new surgery date. I went through another 7 months of therapy. I wasn't fully recovered from my sophomore year tryouts. I still didn't want to look away from sports as they have always provided me a mental outlet and a lot of discipline throughout my life. Instead, I joined this cross country team. As soon as I was cleared to run for the fall and went on to compete in our spring track team, I was one of the main sprinters in the 200-meter race. My love for sports is what kept me going after almost 2 years of therapy, and I was able to take advantage and bond with new teammates. My last 2 years, even if it was no longer soccer, I think this relates to investment banking, because sometimes events do not go our way, and it's important to have a goal in mind to help you persevere and get tasks done. In a job like investment banking, we're working with different markets and a changing economy. Sometimes there can be problems within deals, and it's important to maintain a goal in mind. Okay. This last part is a little bit redundant. I don't know if you noticed that. Right?
Yeah.
It's a little bit repetitive. Like, maintain a goal in mind, have a goal in mind, but we'll come back to that. So I think there's a bit too much context, too much
Mhm.
providing context, like too much of a play by play for what happened and how you got injured. And then like you probably want to avoid doing that when you're storytelling, because it's just it's too in the weeds. Does that make sense? So we want to focus more on like, what did you do specifically,
Mhm.
not like
What happened?
what happened to you, right? So
Okay.
let me see where we can cut down on this. Um, let's move things around a bit. When I was younger, becoming a pro soccer player. When I was in 8th grade, I tore both my ACLs right before the most important tryout. Right before the most important tryout season for the high school team. These years are essential. By these years, you mean like playing on the high school team?
Yeah, like the first two, since I'm gonna go from freshman to sophomore. But
Okay, so the first
I have a feeling something.
first 2 years of high school, essential growing with the team, preparing athletes for their recruitment to go further in their career. I guess that's kind of saying the same things as this, right?
Mhm.
So I would just shorten that. I would just do this. Unfortunately, when I was in 8th grade, I tore both my ACLs. Ready for the most important trials in the high school team. This is emotionally exhausting. For new recruiters, often started looking at players from their first high school years and have been looking forward to them since 6th grade. Um, and then
Is that necessary since the 6th grade? Maybe that's also extra.
oh, it's fine. It's just like that's how long you've been looking forward to it. Um, my recovery ended up taking 7 months. And during that time, I think like so right now in the action, you kind of just like gloss over. You just said like, every session of physical therapy. I think what would be interesting is if you described in more detail all the things you had to do during physical therapy. Like I went to physical therapy, I don't know, twice a week for
Mhm.
X hours each time. I never missed a session. During each session, I will always push myself to the limits.
Okay.
And I want to like, normal recovery time typically is, I don't know, 10 months.
Mhm.
But I wanted to make it back faster. So I pushed myself really, really hard and I was able to get back after 7 months, like
Mhm.
stuff like that is more what I mean by like action. Does that
Action.
make sense?
Okay.
Right. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to write it for you, but
Yeah.
I'm just going to say go into more detail about what you had to do specifically and why this was so hard or so much work or required determination. Because this is the part where you're showing the trait that you're telling them you have.
Mhm.
Um,
Okay.
and then by the time the new round trials arrived, my legs were equal as strong and all the work had paid off. Um, Trials were going great, and I've been put aside. Varsity girls trained. Yeah, like this is like too much detail, right? Like
Mhm. Yeah.
some pain meant. So you tore both of your ACLs, and then this time you tore one.
No, I tore one. I tore one and then I got back and then I tore the other.
Oh, both during 8th grade.
One in 8th grade and one like during tryouts.
Oh, I see. So this is actually one of your ACLs, right? In 8th grade, that was only one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I think that's why I didn't go so into the therapy. My mindset on it was like the determination part was like, okay, you broke one, then you broke the other, and then you kept going like with sports, not so much the therapy part. That was what I was kind of going over. But
Got
I
it.
can, if that makes more sense to do the therapy, then I'll go back and do that.
No, I see what you're saying. Okay, that makes sense. Um, then we'll just say during that time, I diligently into. Is it once a week or
Yeah, I know it was like 3 times a week.
3 times a week? Never missing a session. Did you recover faster than normal? Do you know?
Yeah, it's 9 months.
Okay. An injury.
Maybe too fast because I tore the other one, but I don't know.
9 months to recover from. What? Let's not tell them you took 7 months up front. We'll just say I started diligent. Ever missing a session for injury that typically takes 9 months to recover from. Get back into the game. Turn to make sophomore tryouts. There's 7 months in time for sophomore tryouts, right?
So this one, yes.
I felt like all of my hard work paid off. So even this,
Yeah, that's also stereotypical.
so the tryouts were going really well. What does this mean? This means like not everyone gets to do this.
Yeah, I mean, normally, well, so it was just like freshman and sophomore year, you usually go into JV, like junior varsity. So it was just saying like I was able to recover and then I practiced really hard and then that's just an extra, but maybe that's not really in the context. We can just take it off.
So you got placed in the varsity tryouts.
Sorry?
So you got to skip the JV tryout and go straight to varsity.
Yeah. Is that necessary though?
That's fine. Go straight to varsity tryouts. But then we don't need to tell them like, oh, it was from the club team on the side and whatever. We just say you got injured again, right?
Okay.
Like, that's all that matters, right? Challenge is going so well that I got good job and you go straight to varsity tryouts. But right around then, I ended up injuring my other ACL. This is redundant. I was devastated, but where most people would have given up here. Another surgery so that I could I wasn't fully recovered from my sophomore year tryouts. Isn't it junior year tryouts at this point? Oh no, so the first time you made it in time for the freshman year tryouts. I guess I'm losing track of the timeline. So when you recover for the first 7 months, you made it back in time for the freshman year tryouts?
Yeah.
Got it. This time though, I wasn't able to recover fully in time for the sophomore year tryouts. Which meant my soccer. I said join a cross-country team as soon as I was cleared to run. And went on to compete in our spring track team as one of the main sprinters in our 200-meter race. What can we say about the results? Like in the end, like, I don't know, did you win anything on track team, or is it just like maybe the results just that you had like this great bond, which is fine too.
Um, well, I don't know. I thought, well, results, yeah, I guess. I thought it was like I was able to like get back into sports competitively, like, and then make that bond. But I mean, I didn't go on to like do anything professional. So
Yeah, no, that's fine. It's not even professional. So maybe instead of saying your love for sports, like the trait that we're really trying to highlight is your determination, right? So maybe we say, in the end, my determination is what kept me going after almost 2 years of therapy, constant therapy, and able to still have a very rewarding athletic career in high school and walk away with a lot of amazing relationships, teammates, something like that. And I think from this experience, sometimes things go away. It's important to have a goal in mind. It's important to keep grinding and not give up on your goals. In a job like investment banking, we're working at different measures of changing economy. Well, I'm sure that in a tough job like investment banking, there'll inevitably be some setbacks along the way. Whenever that does happen, I will be sure to until something like that. Does that make sense? Like I'm tying it back to banking, but like really you want your key takeaway to be to reiterate whatever the trait is that you're trying to highlight, right? Which in this case is determination. Does that make sense?
yeah,
Any questions about this?
no, that makes sense.
I think it's a solid answer. Hmm?
Yeah, it's a lot better transition.
Yeah. All right, let's keep going. One of greatest strengths having high work, strong work ethic. Example, this one was about to start my freshman year after taking a gap year. Time was living in France, working exchange. for accommodation and earn another part-time job taking care of 3 children, pay for living expenses. Due to the COVID pandemic, I could not return to the U.S. I was going to have to do my first semester remotely abroad. I had to learn to manage every moment of my day and to stay on top of school and work well. Communication became key throughout this time, and I was always emailing teachers if I needed clarification on assignments. Mornings were dedicated to classes and studying. I would then take a metro for my first job, taking care of 3 boys, making meals, creating activities, and helping them with schoolwork. I would then go home to work with a second family where I looked after one girl to improve her English skills, help her with her evening routine, and make dinner for the family. Anytime after, I would finish up any work and get ready to start the next day. Remember the weekend being what I look forward to the most. I was dedicated to getting ahead in any of my classes and starting the new week ready to go. By the end of the semester, so that's the result. And then you have, that's a problem and that's the action, right? So, okay. By the end of the semester, I was able to get through this semester earning mostly A's and made great connections. I returned to the States in January, and the family invited me back to stay with them over this past summer. Despite having so many responsibilities at once, I was able to communicate with my professors and families for those 4 months and learn to become very efficient with my time. I think this is an important quality for banking. As you're often given multiple tasks and must stay disciplined and get everything done. Okay. So I feel like, I mean, this could work for work ethic too, but the way you kind of framed it feels more like, you're really good at multitasking or juggling like a lot of responsibilities simultaneously, right? So I would probably frame it that way. I mean, either quality is very desirable for banking, so it doesn't really matter, right? So I would say is being really good at multitasking and juggling competing priorities. Taking a gap year at the time I was living in France, working in exchange for accommodation at a part-time job, taking your 3 children, pay for living expenses. During the COVID pandemic, I could not return to the U.S. I was going to do my first semester remotely abroad. Because of this challenge, I had to learn to manage every moment of the day, somehow with school. This is all fine. This is all good description of all the things you had to do. Anytime after, I would finish up any work and get ready to start the next day. Okay. I don't know. This sentence was, I think, a little bit like, what are you trying to say? You're saying,
I think in my head, I was just like, I would often finish with the family and stay up late working and then get up early and then just start again.
Okay, so just say that then. It's easier to understand, right?
Yeah.
Finish with, so there's 2 different families, right?
Yeah.
Stay up late to finish my own work, and then, or is it schoolwork?
Yeah.
I remember the weekend being, and the purpose of this sentence, huh?
Yeah.
We probably don't.
Maybe not.
We probably don't need this because then, like, we don't want the banker to think like, oh, so this is how she's going to be when she's in bank. Yeah. So we'll just get rid of that. But I think you drive the point across that you were super busy, right? Taking care of all these kids and doing school. By the end of the semester, I was able to get through semester instead of earning mostly A's, like, because that kind of implies that there's something you didn't get an
Okay.
A in. Like, what was your GPA? If it was good, let's just use your overall GPA for the semester.
3.6.
Okay. Um, here's to get through semester earning 3.6 GPA.
I don't know,
Wow.
but it was just like it's not 3.7 or above, so that's why I didn't say GPA.
Yeah.
What if I just said good grades? No.
Yeah, let's just say that. Get to this semester with good grades in school while um, making great connections. We'll say while also um, doing a great job for the families I worked with. The family, one of the family invited you back.
Yeah.
This past summer. Oh, I see. Um,
Or the following summer. Would that be better? For context.
oh, it's fine. So able to communicate with professors and families for those 4 months and learn to become very efficient in time. Effectively. Okay, so that's pretty good. All right, let's look at your last one. I mean, so like most likely you're not going to need all three, right? We just prepare three just in case, but you should decide like, which one you think is your best one, and that's usually like your go-to because you'll probably
Yeah.
just need one. The one of my greatest strengths has been having, or I'll just say my intellectual curiosity. Um, when I enrolled in too many different college credit classes after taking so many years of the same math and English curriculums, signing up for high school classes was one of my favorite parts. Huh. So many years. So this is what, like in junior high, you mean?
I mean, just growing up, you just kind of always take math and English, math and English. Like you don't really pick what you take. That was what I was.
Well, classes and fields I had never learned about before, from psychology to philosophy to comparative government to economics. I want to take all of them. Although we were recommended to take 1 or 2 classes per year, I ended up taking 11 by graduation. So I was able to become very independent and focus on my schoolwork. Although I struggled with a lot of sleep, especially the last 2 years, I remember how much I enjoyed reading a 2 a.m. textbook learning. What is a 2 a.m. textbook learning?
Like reading a textbook at 2 a.m.
Oh. And learning and taking notes on Freud or learning about the UK government. By the end of high school, I felt I had really taken advantage of my classes, graduated with much more well-rounded knowledge than when I had started. Um, Yeah, I mean, like, intellectual curiosity, it is a good trait to have for banking, but I don't know. I feel like out of your 3 examples, this one's definitely the weakest.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you agree, but
Yeah, that's why I put it at the end.
so I don't know. I think if you feel the same way too, like
Mm-hmm.
you should either come up with a better one,
Different one.
or because I mean we can edit this one, but it's just like, okay, you were really excited that there are all these new classes that you could take,
Mm-hmm.
but like I think that the challenge here is probably just that there's not really like a real problem or challenge that you have to overcome.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is like there were there was there weren't all these classes you could take when you were younger. Like that's not like
Yeah.
it's not doesn't provide for a good story, I guess. So
Yeah.
I might just try to come up with a different one here. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Can I ask you though, do you think it's also just like, so the reason I went for intellectually, like everything, like all of these events that I've been going to, they're just constantly talking about how you have to be curious. You have to be curious that you're asking questions and you're learning, and that's how you move up and you have to be curious. That's why I went for that trait. But then, so I can probably find a new trait. That's what I was thinking based on all of those events. But,
I mean, it's not the trait that's the problem, right? Like I said, it is an important trait. I'm not surprised that, they keep mentioning that. But I think you could stick with that trait, but then you need
mhm,
like a
an actual story.
like a
Yeah.
better example that demonstrates intellectual curiosity, right? It's like if there was a project that you worked on
Mhm.
where, maybe your boss told you to do X, and then as you were doing it, you started asking these questions yourself, like, what about this? What about this? What about this? And then you went above and
Mm,
beyond
okay.
and did all this extra stuff on your own. And because of that, when you came back and kind of like presented your findings to your boss, it was just like you over delivered, and it was so much more than what they expected and what they asked for. Like that would be a great example of
That makes
intellectual
sense.
curiosity. I'm not saying that should be the exact example, but like I just kind of
Yeah.
made that one up off the cuff, right?
Okay.
As opposed to
Yeah.
saying like, oh, just like,
Yeah. I took all these classes. Okay.
yeah, makes sense.
Yep.
Pick a different trait or use the same trait, but
I think what I struggle with the most with these is just like some of the questions you have to think of such a specific scenario. Like when you're thinking back like all through your whole life, which is I think what I keep doing. I keep like making them too general and then I go into detail. I don't know if maybe you think the same or like what you've seen with other people. You know what I
uh,
mean? Like this is like you're saying like a specific project, whereas like I'm thinking like all of high school or like with the ACL, I was thinking of like 2 years or like the whole semester, not so much as like a specific thing.
got it. Yeah, I mean, it can be either, right? It can be a period of time where something really life changing happened. I mean, ACL in this case, life changing, not in a good way, but it could be something like that, or it could be more granular, like just like even a specific project or
Okay.
one specific event that happened, right? As long as it demonstrates the quality that you're trying to demonstrate. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so let's keep going. Let's do weaknesses. So, okay, one of my greatest weaknesses is I'm trying to be self-sufficient, or self-efficient. What's self-sufficient? I think you meant sufficient.
Self-sufficient.
Yeah. I've been trying to be self-sufficient, or has been trying to be self-sufficient because that sounds kind of like a strength. Um,
Okay.
my um, inability to, or has been my tendency to not to shy away from asking for help, even when that might be the right thing to do. Right? Was this a problem? So I'm just like kind of like softening the language, you know? Not like you never ask for help, but just it's a tendency to shy away from it, right? This is problematic one time when I worked as a waiter and my manager asked me if I could work evening hours in the restaurant by myself. This was Sunday and service was generally slow. And at the restaurant, I ended up having many guests and I had to, so let's say, I had to manage multiple tables with family orders, make drinks, work with the kitchen staff to coordinate sending out the dishes. Afraid to ask or bother my manager for help, who was in his office. I tried doing all the roles all night, and was in a lot of stress until I ordered one wrong meal, and the customer had to wait an extra 15 minutes for his meal to be ready. Okay. After that experience, I talked to my manager, who was upset that I didn't come and ask for help. I have since learned that there was no point in trying to exceed what I could do at the expense of a client, and at the end, what was most important was our customer service and that people had a good night. From then on, anytime I was left alone or needed extra help, reach out to the manager, and we had very successful evenings. Although I still need to work on. I still need to work on sometimes doing this in school with professors. I always remember this experience and those who could ask for help if work is too overwhelming, and I know I'm trying the best I can do. Okay. I'm trying to think. So I think the thing with this is usually with weaknesses, ideally you want a weakness where for the action section you had to like go and actually take action and do something, as opposed to just say the action is just I came to a realization, and then it's just like I just automatically changed it, right? So for example, like one of my weaknesses was the way I communicated tend to give people the wrong impression, right? Because I tend to be more laid back, and the way I speak kind of reflects that. And a lot of times people misinterpret that as me not caring, right? And then so that could be like the situation of the problem, right? Um, what I did about that was I actually went out and hired a speech coach. So I met with the speech coach once a week for an hour, and we ended up doing, different exercises to practice like even like the shape of my mouth when I speak, and like my facial expression and body language, and just things like such minute things that I had never ever thought about before, right? And it was a very long and honestly at times painful process, because I felt like I had to learn how to speak in a way that wasn't really myself, and sometimes I also felt like it was very fake, but I kept at it because I knew that effective communication is really really important, especially when I'm working, right, or when I'm talking to clients or just talking to my colleagues. So after doing that for 5 months, I ended up finally getting a lot better. And maybe the end result is like during my next performance review, my manager actually commented on the fact that I got a lot better uh, at communicating, or at like the way I present myself, right? Like, so that would be the result. And I know that this is going to be really important for investment banking, because in banking you're constantly having to communicate with clients who are CEOs and CFOs of some of the most successful companies in the world. And so if you
Mhm.
can communicate effectively, then you're not going to be able to win the client's trust or something like that. So I just gave you like another example off the cuff, but like the key is that action section in the middle.
Mhm.
I have like a very concrete thing I can point to, which is I went and worked with a coach,
Okay.
right? And then I just took that. But like a lot of people, the mistake they make is like they'll say, oh, then I went and hired a coach, and then that's all they'll say about it, and then they'll move on. I elaborated on what I did with the coach in like anywhere from like 3 to 5 sentences so that it sounds more substantial,
Okay.
right?
Yeah. That makes
So
sense.
I would say like either elaborate more on the steps you took to overcome this mental block of
Okay.
asking for help, or pick, because I know like for this example it might be kind of hard. It might have really just been as simple as, oh, I just realized and then I just stopped doing it, right?
Yeah.
Or pick a better example where you have something more actionable. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's keep going. Now one of my greatest weaknesses is speaking in front of lots of people. Public speaking in front of a large audience. One time I had a presentation to give in my philosophy class, and even though I had learned all the concepts in my part well, once it got to the front of the class, I froze. My voice started shaking. I felt like I forgot everything I knew. Public speaking wasn't important skill, so okay, so that was a problem. New public speaking was an important skill, so I decided to start joining different clubs to feel more comfortable speaking with different people. After being in my school's Hispanic club for 2 years, I became familiar with how the club's president organized events and led the club members. Decided to sign up to lead a club my last year because I was in a more comfortable environment where I knew the people working with me. It's a good way to start speaking to a group on a weekly basis. Became better with this and more confident over the years. I was able to effectively coordinate events with the 20 new club members and speak at the final assembly in front of the school later that year. So this is the results. Although sometimes I still freeze up, I still continue to work on my public speaking today. And
New York, not New Year.
Work on this by leading a small group in New York that meets weekly for coffee chats, where I lead the conversation between guest speakers and the students to learn about my performance. I think most of this is fine. The only thing I would tweak is like the key takeaway here.
Okay.
I still continue to work on public speaking today. By leading a small group in New York that meets weekly for coffee chats, where I lead a conversation between guest speakers and students to learn about professional experiences. And I might tie it back to banking. So like, although I know that as an investment banking analyst, I probably won't be required to do public speaking too often. It is, I know it's a skill that becomes increasingly important as I progress my career, so it's something that I continue to work on. Something like that, right? That's my tie back to banking. Does that make sense? Cool. Okay. Okay. Another one of my greatest weaknesses. Sorry?
Yeah. Okay. I think this is very storytelling. Okay. Like now that we've gone through them, I think I've just learned how to make these better.
Yeah, it's probably starting to feel a little bit redundant, right? because all I'm doing is I'm breaking it up into the 5 different parts. That allows me to like visually see if I've checked each. It's almost like there's 5 boxes you have to check. Did I check each box? And like, if not, I mean, obviously you did because you followed the framework, but like, do the any of the 5 parts need to be improved in some
Mm-hmm.
way, shape, or form, right? And honestly, like, if you want to really dumb it down, like with behavioral answers, there's usually only, I would say, like 4 major categories of mistakes that people make, right? One is sometimes they say too much and there's too much detail. So, like going back to your soccer example, right, where
Mm-hmm.
you're like just getting too into the weeds. Sometimes it's like not saying enough, right? So, like on some of these where I say like, hey, we probably need to like elaborate a bit more on your actions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's like the third one is picking the wrong example, right? So for example, the one you did for intellectual curiosity, where you use this as an example of like, oh, I like taking a lot of different classes, right? That's the third category. And then literally the fourth one, which I don't think you've made so far, is like when people don't sequence their answer in the right way, so like it doesn't flow, right? But like if you're following the frameworks that we give you, typically you're not going to make that mistake because we already told you like go in this order. So it's
Mm-hmm.
usually like the first 3 that you have to worry about. It's like, am I saying too much, or am I saying too little, or am I using, or is the example that I'm using just like not that good, right? So those
Yeah.
are the things to think about when you're like assessing whether your answer needs to be better in any way, right? And sometimes it's hard to do it for your own answers because obviously you wrote these answers in the first place, so they probably sound pretty good to you, right? Like
Mhm.
otherwise it wouldn't be your answer, right? So that's why it's good to have like someone else take a look at it, right? Um, Makes sense though.
Yes.
Cool. So no one agrees with you last minute or is planning last minute or not ahead of time. Um, so is this like procrastination?
I think but that was that again. No, well, I don't know. Is it?
Well, let me see how to talk about it. So this became problematic during my gap year when I was living by myself in France and I had to learn to take the public metro by to my babysitting work every day because I hadn't planned. I got lost and was 15 minutes late to meet the family. Luckily, the children were still sleeping, but I was very embarrassed. Um, After this, I always left 30 minutes earlier than the estimated arrival time to make sure I accounted for any time that the metro could be delayed or for any other incident. I was not late to my work again and have since tried to apply this whenever I have appointments. I have to meet someone. No, I also started scheduling my weeks ahead of time on Sunday night so that I can coordinate every day with different times so I can anticipate being on time to anything I have going on throughout the day, whether it's my classes, clubs, or meetings. Learn that it is important to not let people down who are counting on you and become a reliable person. The word and more organized. Okay, a little bit of grammar here, but just a small thing. I mean, I don't. I think this sounds kind of like. Um, this sounds like procrastination when I first read it, which obviously is not a quality that we want to have in banking. But I think once I look at the example you gave, it's not really about procrastinating. You're really talking about, um,
Like coordinating.
yeah. It's almost like just not leaving enough buffer in your schedule for like unexpected events. You know,
Mhm. Is that,
but
I feel
like
like
that's
I
not.
feel like
Yeah,
that's not great.
yeah. That's not like a super strong weakness. You know.
Yeah.
Um, I think I also was like a little bit worried when I kind of read this part because basically you're giving an example of how you were late to work.
Yeah.
And then, we talk about for weakness questions not having like a detrimental weakness.
That's yeah.
Just like is she going to show up late to a client meeting one time or
Mhm.
something? I mean, you kind of
That's
turn
what
it
I meant.
around.
Yeah.
You kind of turn around by saying you were never late ever after that. And so I think that's kind of what made it more
Mhm.
okay. But um yeah, but I don't know. I'm not sure about this one, to be honest.
Okay.
Like
Okay.
if you were gonna use this, then you probably have to rephrase this like, um one of my greatest weaknesses is, you know, I try to um squeeze too much, or I try to pack too much into my schedule in an effort to be in an effort to maximize um, productivity or something. I don't know, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Maybe I'll change it.
yeah, but like, that's a mouthful, and
Yeah.
I don't know. There's probably like a better example you could.
Yeah, for sure. Okay.
Okay.
I don't know. The weaknesses were really hard. Not like that, but I just like I don't know if there's anything you recommend for when you think of weaknesses. I
I
just
think
kept like
yeah, I think weakness is
yeah,
tricky for a lot of people, right? Uh,
yeah.
but the reason why it's tricky is because I think for some people they're afraid to give a real weakness,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that makes it tricky. But we all have real weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
I think the first step is to like do some introspection and be really honest about like what are my real weaknesses,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then like if any of those weaknesses are actually detrimental weaknesses, then obviously you can't use them.
Yeah.
But if once you have like, three real weaknesses, if they're not like completely detrimental, then I would just talk about I would just talk about that, right? But obviously, like, the question is, have you worked on those weaknesses? If you haven't,
Yeah.
then you kind of have to like make up the action section
Yeah.
of what you did, right? But that usually isn't that hard to do,
Mm-hmm.
depending on what the
Yeah.
weakness is, you know. So,
Yeah.
um,
Makes sense. Yeah. This
but
feedback
like
is great.
if you want to like go back and think about it, and then like you can, send me some of the weaknesses that you think of on Slack and see like,
Yeah.
hey, what do you think of this weakness? Do you think I can go with this? Like, I'll give you my thoughts.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yes, hold on. Okay. Um, all right. Let's do at least one of these because they're all kind of, again, similar format, right? But in the interest,
Yeah.
let's do at least one of these. So tell me about a time when you demonstrated teamwork or leadership. Okay, so a
Can
time, yeah,
Okay. For like quite a few of these, and this is what sometimes it's like going more into something I've already talked about.
yeah.
That's something I was going to ask you. Is that normal, or would you prefer to just like, if I redo these, for them to have nothing to do with the other ones I've answered? Just because you never
Give
know.
me other examples you've already used up here.
Like in one of them, I know I go back into detail about like the soccer scenario.
Yeah.
Um, so I was like, should I just totally do something else?
So I
Or like
think
here, the Hispanic, it's kind
I,
of touching on before.
I think it's fine to have overlap for the purpose of the questionnaire. I mean, like realistically, each of your interviews is going to be 30 minutes. And sometimes the interview will also be partially technical.
Mhm.
Even if the entire 30 minutes was a behavioral interview, like realistically, they're not going to ask you like 10 behavioral questions, like they're not going to ask you every single one of these questions in the same interview, right? So the chances of you having like double up on an example that you've already used, I think is usually pretty low. Um, and then the other thing that I would say is, a lot of like this is why we kind of like try to lump things together. But like sometimes as you're thinking about your stories to use for these situational questions, like you might be able to, you want to think about, it's like we say in the modules, you want to think about like what other situational question can this story apply for, right? Because like, for example, your teamwork and leadership example might also work for like, it might also work for like, overcoming a challenge, because maybe you have to demonstrate leadership to overcome a challenge, right? It might work for like working hard, meeting tight deadlines, because maybe you led your team in some way to help them meet some tight deadlines. So my point is, the more flexible and adaptable each of your stories are, then you're going to be able to like, let's say like, okay, this story was already used earlier on an interview. You might be able to grab like your other story that was originally prepared for, I don't know, tight deadlines. And then you might be able to reframe that as a leadership story, right? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then worst case scenario, if you can't, meaning like they ask you a question and you're like, oh, I already used this example and I also can't think of any other examples, then you just then worst case scenario, just tell them like, yeah, so for this I would probably use the same example that I mentioned earlier, which is that one time when I tore my ACL for soccer. And the reason why I think that's also applicable to this situation is that blah 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 blah, and you just go back into it,
Okay.
right? And then so you're not like trying to hide it, you just own it. It's like, yeah, I'm using the same example,
Yeah.
but just be like matter of fact about it.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yes.
Cool. Okay, so let me see here. So a time I demonstrated leadership was when I was president of the Hispanics Club my last year in high school. One of our assignments every year was to organize a school presentation celebrating Latin culture, with traditional dances, bands, and speakers. That year, our presentation date had moved up very early in the year, and we only had 3 months to prepare as opposed to 6. Okay, that's a problem. As people became busy with classes, some people weren't showing up to practices, while others were putting in a lot of time to come. Coordination was essential, especially since dances require partners. I decided to accommodate morning or afternoon classes so that people had more flexibility with their schedules and no one fell behind. I assigned one leader to lead each dance to help us split responsibilities and keep track of the group's attendance. With fundraising, selling food, we try to make meetings more interactive and provide snacks and food for people. As a result, by the time the Hispanic Assembly came, we had a dedicated team and exciting program to present to the school. Although difficult at first, eventually we were able to make club gatherings fun and create a close community within the club. Our presentation received lots of appraisal. Received lots of appraisal? You mean praise?
Praise. Yeah.
Okay.
Praise.
Lots of praise and lots of interest grew for people who wanted to participate the following year. I guess this is part of the results. I learned the importance of coordination, communication, as well as creating an enjoyable environment so that everyone works towards a common goal and people want to participate. Okay. Yeah, so I mean, again, Spark outline, right? I think for the most part this works. This is the situation. This is the problem. I think the only thing I would say is like for this section, for the action section, like I decided to accommodate morning or afternoon classes so that people have more flexibility with their schedules. I don't know what this means. Like what like what does this mean? How did you do this? Like did you just like, split up the people that have morning classes in one group and people that have afternoon classes in a different group, and then they get paired up as dance partners, or like it's not super clear,
Okay.
right? And then I would say with fundraising, selling food, we try to make meetings more interactive. I'm also not sure what this means. With fundraising, selling food.
From selling food.
With fundraising from selling food. So you guys were fundraising by selling food, and
I think, well, what I was just saying was like making like an enjoyable environment for other people. As like leadership, I guess. So I was like, from fundraising, we use funds to like create more enjoyable sessions for everybody to come.
so with the money that we have fundraised, like that,
Okay, yeah, rather than food, yeah. That's
we
good.
decided to allocate some our budget to making meetings more interactive by providing snacks and food for people. This made the meetings enjoyable and turned it into something that people enjoyed coming to, as opposed to feeling like it was a or something. I don't know, right? So I learned the importance of coordination, communication, as well as creating an enjoyable environment.
I think then that's so that everyone is like redundant to just creating an enjoyable environment now. Or just that whole thing.
I think like we want to be more explicit about tying this back to whatever trait, you know. So whether that's like teamwork or leadership, like if they say, tell me about time you demonstrate leadership, right? So you can say like, I learned that a big part of team being a leader right? Or you can say a big part of, you know, working effectively teams is understanding the importance of coordination and communication, as well as creating an enjoyable environment so that everyone, the team, only want to be part of or something, you know. And it'll probably be, yeah, I mean, this is probably fine. And I was gonna say like the other optional thing is like if you somehow tied it back to banking, right? So like,
Okay.
I know that when we're in banking, sometimes other people on the team will also have a lot of commitments that may pull them away from the project that we're working on. And so in those instances, you know, I don't know. I mean, like this example probably is not like super applicable to banking because you're not going to just like,
Yeah.
you know, make it more fun or whatever. But like if your leadership example was like, maybe you were working in like one common example that people use is like, oh, we're working in a school project, and then someone in the group was a slacker and didn't carry their weight, and then I stepped in and either like talked him back into like being more involved or like picked up his slack, right? Then like something like that, if it was an example like that, that could be easier to tie back to banking. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I know you always say at the end, tie it back to banking. Sometimes I didn't know, do you just recommend specifically always saying, I know that in investment banking, so and so, like give a scenario of investment banking?
You don't want to be robotic,
Mm-hmm.
right? You don't want to be like overly formulaic, because then like sometimes people will catch on,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so you can kind of like say it in slightly different words, or like you don't have to do it for every single answer, you know. But yeah, I mean, like you can say like, I know that I invest in banking, blah 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 blah, or I know that as an investment banking analyst, I'm going to have to, do X, or I've heard from speaking to many bankers that sometimes on the job, XYZ thing will happen. Like I'm kind of saying the same things, but I'm
Yeah.
just like kind of using different wording, right?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, cool. Let's stop here. And then I know there's like more questions. Like we'll probably just maybe finish these offline.
Okay.
And I think you might have some other questions that, well, actually, were you planning on sending me the other questions, or were you going to wait and hold off on those until closer to your interview so that they're more current? Is that the plan, or what?
Yeah, it's the 14th though.
Yeah.
So I have to turn it in by the 14th. I don't know if it matters if I turn, so that's next Sunday.
Yeah. Yeah. So if it's the 14th, which is less than a week away, then I would probably just, I'll probably just send those to me
Okay.
ASAP so that we can,
Okay.
prepare them.
Yeah, and that's another thing, just like with the market questions. I mean, I think it's just like you have to understand a general outline, but then those are like the few that you constantly have to change now, especially if like I'm gonna go recruiting into next year, right?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what you choose, but
Yeah.
For example, like for one of the deals, like if you pick a deal that's like very recent,
Yeah.
6 months from now, it's still a relatively new deal.
Okay. Okay.
But if it's like they talk about something that's been happening in the economy or in the markets, like that stuff might change faster, right? But if it's like, tell me about a deal you've been following, or pitch me a stock that you like, like some of those things, they don't have to change from week to week or even month to month, right?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, that works. So for next session, what do you think I should maybe have or work for?
I think send me the rest of your answers.
Yeah.
I'll look at it. If necessary, we might look at it one more time, or actually, if it's due on, it says due on the 14th.
Yeah.
So the other thing we could do that we could consider doing too is we could maybe pull the next session forward, because I know the next session is on the 15th. We could pull it forward so that it's like right before the 14th.
Okay.
And just do like, kind of like a final check or a sign off type of thing. And then like after that, we can kind of start working on your technicals.
Okay.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, cool. So we'll do that. We can figure out a time.
Okay. Okay, perfect.
Cool.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed the content, please subscribe to our channel or podcast so that you can get notified of all of our future episodes as well. If you'd like to apply to work with us so that we can help you in a similar way, feel free to reach out to our team at www.wallstreetmastermind.com/apply. The street is abbreviated to ST, so it's wallstmastermind.com/apply. Talk soon.